In less than 24 hours, the carefully orchestrated illusion of Queen Camilla's absolute supremacy evaporated under the searing glare of the royal enclosure at Ascot. What Camilla just realized behind closed doors, as her closest family members were quietly directed away from the royal canopy and toward the standard public side gates, is that the bloodline of the House of Windsor does not bend to administrative maneuvers. For months, she believed she had successfully rewritten the rules of royal proximity, executing what insiders described as a cruel campaign to edge out the blood princesses from the public eye. But at the gates of Britain's most exclusive royal event, the trap snapped shut with devastating clarity, exposing the profound difference between wearing a temporary crown and wielding permanent institutional power. This video will unpack the silent, high-stakes warfare that recently erupted behind palace walls, revealing how a secret power grab intended to elevate non-royal blood backfired spectacularly. We will analyze the precise paper trail that triggered a fierce, protective counteroffensive from Princess Anne and Prince William, and how they weaponized the rigid architecture of royal protocol to deliver a soundless public humiliation. By the end of this breakdown, you will understand the deep psychological dynamics of a monarchy in transition, where the illusion of absolute authority has collided with the harsh reality of commercial desperation. To appreciate the magnitude of this sudden institutional reckoning, we must first examine the formidable empire of influence Camilla believed she had secured right before the collapse. For over 3 decades, her trajectory has been a masterclass in calculated patience and forensic public relations. She survived the global storm of the 90s, outlasted the enduring memory of Princess Diana, and methodically positioned herself as the indispensable emotional anchor for King Charles. When she was finally crowned at Westminster Abbey, it felt like the ultimate validation of a lifelong strategy. In her mind, the transition from a highly controversial figure to the supreme matriarch of the firm was complete. Her confidence grew so absolute that she began to operate as if her influence over the sovereign was a mandate to reshape the structural future of the family itself. This supreme confidence set the stage for what would become her most audacious and ultimately fatal maneuver. In the quiet, highly sensitive administrative offices of the palace, a series of routine updates began to catch the attention of senior courtiers. Following recent public vulnerabilities within the core royal family, Camilla initiated what appeared to be a systematic effort to marginalize Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, utilizing the lingering historical scandals associated with the House of York as a convenient bureaucratic weapon. Her office began to drop the blood princesses from high-profile engagements, most notably the Chelsea Flower Show and the prestigious guest lists for Royal Ascot. To the outside world, it was presented as a standard consolidation of a slimmed-down monarchy. But behind closed doors, it was recognized as something far more calculating and intentional campaign to erase the immediate bloodline of the king's sister and brother, clearing a visual and institutional path for Camilla's own non-royal children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopez, to occupy the inner sanctum of royal privilege. She assumed that by operating through the opaque bureaucracy of palace guest lists and event protocols, her actions would remain undetected, or at least unquestioned. Camilla believed that with the king completely under her management, her decisions carried the absolute force of the crown. Her goal was not merely to reduce the public footprint of the York princesses, but to establish a dangerous precedent where her own children could seamlessly step into the vacuum. She envisioned a future where the Parker Bowles name would carry the implicit authority of royalty, enjoying the permanent luxuries and prestige of the state without bearing any of its historical or constitutional burdens. This was an attempt to siphon institutional prominence away from the legitimate bloodline, securing a private, untouchable social dynasty before the political winds shifted and Prince William inevitably took the throne. What Camilla failed to recognize was that her actions had crossed a definitive red line for Princess Anne. The Princess Royal, widely revered as the ironclad traditionalist and the fiercest protector of the monarchy's foundational rules, has spent a lifetime defending the integrity of the crown. When news reached her office that Beatrice and Eugenie were being systematically frozen out of historic family traditions, Anne immediately looked past the administrative excuses. She recognized that this was not a legitimate optimization of the firm, but a cruel, calculated attempt by an outsider to dismantle the hereditary hierarchy of the family. The realization that her nieces were being weaponized against their own heritage triggered a cold forensic investigation. Anne did not engage in loud confrontations or leak emotional grievances to the press. Instead, she quietly traced the paper trail of guest list revisions directly back to the Queen's private aides. Knowing that she required absolute institutional leverage to crush this overreach permanently, Princess Anne aligned herself with Prince William. The Prince of Wales, who now controls the immense sovereign wealth and land of the Duchy of Cornwall, shared his aunt's profound moral outrage. For William, Camilla's campaign was a direct and painful echo of the manipulative backroom tactics that had caused his late mother, Princess Diana, so much agonizing paranoia decades ago. He saw this latest maneuver as a staggering exploitation of his father's current vulnerabilities and a direct insult to the uncomplaining sacrifice of Princess Catherine, who has always respected the institutional boundaries that Camilla was now actively trying to bypass. The alliance between the heir to the throne and the Princess Royal created an unstoppable force of institutional defense. They realized that a simple verbal reprimand would not suffice. They needed to execute a cold administrative retaliation that would dismantle Camilla's illusion of power forever. The retaliation was executed with absolute precision, utilizing the weaponization of protocol rather than public drama. While Camilla was preparing for her grand appearance at Royal Ascot, fully expecting her family to take center stage under the royal canopy, William and Anne silently moved against her. The Prince of Wales issued a series of structural directives regarding the management of royal credentials, event perimeters, and the allocation of high-security access passes. Without a single public announcement, the security matrix for Royal Ascot was completely revised. The exceptional VIP access codes that Camilla's office had quietly granted to her extended. Family were abruptly revoked under the direct authorization of the Prince of Wales's office. At the same time, Princess Anne personally ensured that Beatrice and Eugenie were restored to the official royal party, completely neutralizing the vacuum Camilla had tried to create. When the gates of Ascot opened, the devastating reality of this silent coup caught the Queen entirely off guard. As her family arrived at the exclusive perimeter expecting the seamless high-security entry reserved for the inner circle of the monarchy, they were stopped by security personnel acting on explicit orders from the heir to the throne. Their passes were no longer valid for the sovereign enclosures. They were politely but firmly redirected to the standard public side doors, forced to exit the royal orbit and enter like ordinary citizens. Inside the enclosure, surrounded by the flashing cameras of the global press, Camilla stood watching this visual humiliation unfold in real time. The realization of her sudden powerlessness hit her with crushing force. The administrative trick she thought would secure her family's dominance had instead handed William and Anne the exact justification they needed to sever her inner circle from the royal framework. In a state of growing desperation, watching her meticulously constructed empire of influence unravel in plain sight, Camilla broke the most fundamental rule of royal survival. She panicked. Bypassing the established chain of command and the sophisticated network of private secretaries, she turned instinctively to the one man who had spent 30 years serving as her ultimate shield. She presented King Charles with the reality of the administrative shutdown, demanding that he unleash his imperial authority to override his son's directives and restore her family's privileges. But as she waited for the sovereign to speak, what she received instead was a cold, devastating silence that would change the reading of everything. The trap had completely snapped shut, leaving the queen isolated within the very system she thought she had conquered, and setting the stage for an ultimate confrontation over the true ownership of the royal legacy. The silence of King Charles in that brilliant Ascot sunshine was not an act of sudden indifference, but the ultimate capitulation of a monarch who understands that the survival of the institution must always supersede personal domestic peace. For decades, Charles had broken protocols and defied family expectations to elevate Camilla, shielding her from the deep undercurrents of public and institutional resentment. But when faced with a united front from his sister, Princess Anne, and his heir, Prince William the King recognized the stark constitutional boundary. To overrule the security and guest list directives enforced by the Prince of Wales would be to declare war on the very future of the monarchy. Charles chose the preservation of the Windsor line over the social ambitions of his wife. As he turned his attention back to the racecourse, offering only a polite nod to the passing delegations, Camilla was left to stand in her exquisite couture, entirely isolated within the royal enclosure. This psychological climax exposes the deep financial and structural vulnerability that defines Camilla's current position. To the public, she appears as the apex matriarch surrounded by historic wealth, chauffeured in state vehicles and living in palaces that stretch for miles. But behind the dazzling public relations machinery lies a state of profound commercial desperation. Camilla owns no sovereign land. She commands no independent crown revenues, and she holds no personal equity in the magnificent estates that symbolize royal power. The entire financial architecture of the British monarchy is designed to bypass spouses and flow seamlessly from sovereign to heir, protecting the core assets from fragmentation and inheritance taxes. The Duchy of Cornwall, a billion-dollar empire of real estate and investments, belongs entirely to Prince William. The Duchy of Lancaster is tied strictly to the sovereign office. Camilla is in reality a temporary tenant in a gilded house she does not own. This terrifying lack of actual ownership is precisely why the Ascot guest lists mattered so much. It was never just about a day at the races. It was a calculated attempt to secure permanent social collateral for her bloodline. Camilla knows that when the current reign inevitably concludes, her institutional influence drops to absolute zero. She will become a dowager queen entirely dependent on the financial benevolence and administrative goodwill of King William V. By attempting to systematically freeze out Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, Camilla sought to create an institutional habit of prioritizing her own children. Tom and Laura, making their proximity to the throne, seem natural and permanent. It was a desperate race against a ticking clock, a frantic effort to build an untouchable social dynasty before her protective shield vanished. But the silent execution orchestrated by William and Anne did more than just protect. The guest list, it signaled a profound restoration of the natural royal order. For years, Prince William has watched the slow, bureaucratic accommodation of the woman who caused his mother, Princess Diana, such immense psychological grief. While he accepted the compromise for the sake of his father's peace, this sudden boundary line proves that his tolerance does not extend to the future of the crown. By fiercely defending the rights of the blood princesses, William and Anne have sent a clear message to the palace establishment: the era of backdoor manipulation and non-royal entitlement is officially over. The ghost of Princess Diana has not been erased. Her legacy has been inherited and weaponized by a son who refuses to let the core identity of the Windsor family be diluted. Standing beside William in this unfolding new order is Princess Catherine, whose dignified resilience offers a devastating contrast to Camilla's frantic maneuvering. While the Queen Consort scrambles for administrative loopholes to elevate her inner circle, Catherine has mastered the institution through uncomplaining sacrifice and absolute devotion to duty. She does not need to manufacture access or alter palace protocols. Her position is legitimate, permanent, and deeply woven into the affection of the global public. William's aggressive enforcement of the Ascot perimeters is fundamentally an act of protection for Catherine's future reign. He is ensuring that when his wife steps onto the global stage as queen, the court will be completely cleansed of opportunistic distractions and rival non-royal factions operating in the shadows. The forensic proof of this shifting power dynamic is now visible to anyone who knows how to read the subtle adjustments within the palace walls. In the days following the Ascot incident, royal insiders noticed a sharp, uncompromising shift in daily operations. Protocol, which had gently softened during the early months of the king's reign to accommodate Camilla's extended family, has suddenly turned to iron. The access passes for her personal staff have been strictly audited, and their ability to navigate the private wings of the palace without direct authorization from the Prince of Wales's office has been revoked. More telling still was the visual staging of subsequent official photographs, where Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie were intentionally positioned within the immediate circle of the king, while Camilla was subtly moved toward the periphery of the frame. These are not accidental changes or petty snubs. They are the administrative executions that carry the true weight of sovereign power. William is steadily closing the entry points, locking down the resources, and drawing an impenetrable boundary between the true bloodline and outside ambition. Queen Camilla may still wear the historic jewels and wave flawlessly from the balcony for the cameras, projecting an image of serene authority. But the absolute power she thought she had conquered has been exposed as a fragile mirage. The Ascot Purge was her ultimate institutional reckoning, proving that in the high-stakes warfare of the British monarchy, the system always corrects itself to ensure the survival of the bloodline. As the transition of power silently accelerates behind the palace gates, the coming months will determine the final trajectory of this historic reign. If you value this level of forensic emotional analysis and want to understand the true mechanisms of royal survival beyond the tabloid headlines, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Leave your thoughts in the comments below on how you think the institution will handle this permanent shift in balance. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next breakdown.